Love it. I love it. Kate, I'm so glad that there's a date up in the top of my computer. It's Saturday, November the 13th, and we are on the 14th law for our 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Sherry shared something with me that I found very fascinating this week. And I'm going to get her to list the books, but she said that Maxwell has foundational books that are like absolutes for absolutely everybody, but they are the foundation of everything else. So this is one of them. And what are the other ones, Sherry?
Yeah, he talks about this in a few of his things, but the 21 laws, absolutely. But the 17 laws of teamwork, he considers is a foundational book for organizations. And I think that's based on his belief concept that he teaches is one is too small of a number to make a huge impact. And it takes more people. So that one is considered foundational. And the other one is the 15 laws of invaluable growth. The one is personal. The 15 laws is a personal growth. It's part of your personal growth plan. The 21 laws is kind of that leadership growth into being able to working with teams. And the team one is that bigger impact book. And with the teamwork, it's interesting because he says, you really can't be a good leader until you're a good team player. And the two totally go together. So, yeah.
So my question is, just because I want to know, are there workbooks that go with those two as well? Or is it just the book? This is just so in-depth. Like, I can't imagine doing 21 laws now that we've done it with the workbook. I can't fathom doing it without a book.
So the 17 laws of teamwork has a workbook, and the 15 laws. Brenna, remind me, is there, I don't remember a workbook for the 15 laws. Is there, Amy?
No, there isn't.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is foundational. And the reason that we chose to do this is because initially the conversation was that we wanted to do the 5 levels of leadership, which is here. We wanted to do this book, but Sherry in her wisdom said, hold on, we need to do the 21 laws first because, and she's right, because it references the 21 laws so much that you will get so much more out of this book if you do this one first and in depth this one. And this book is a very different type of book than this one is, like totally different. This one doesn't have a workbook. It's so different. So we will be starting this book. This is a little plug for you. We will be starting this book in February. We chose to not rush our way through the end of this book because if you can math this morning, I obviously could not last night. If you can math this morning, you know that we only have like 7 more lessons after this, right? 5, 6 or 7. I can't math. Anyway, there's 21. We're on 14. How's that? But we're going to take this to the end of January. 7. Okay, I'm right. We're going to take this to the end of January. And then the other piece is we want to hear from you. We've kind of scheduled in one day where we want you guys to give us feedback on the law that was the most impactful to you. So start thinking about what was the most impactful thing for you through this whole process. And we're going to actually devote an entire session to talking through what we've learned and that kind of thing. All right. I think that that's all the housekeeping. Oh, except that next week, it's going to be really exciting. You're going to want to be here totally for sure, because we have guest hosts that are going to be getting up at stupid o'clock, right, Sharon? And having their brains going and all the good things. I think that Amy, Sharon, and Carrie, am I right?
Yes.
Are going to be leading the study next week. And they get a really stellar chapter to do. They get the law of victory. So you guys are going to want to be here. Sherry and I are elsewhere, but just so excited to hear what you guys bring to the table. So all that to
So
say,
Nikki asked a question in the chat and she said, I have the blue one, but not the current one. Will I still get value? Because I haven't done the red one. Or should I order the red one and try to catch up? You know, Nikki, if you go into Grow in the Leader Lounge, you can listen to the ones, listen while you do dishes or something, because sometimes we just chat. But if you listen through those, you will get lots of value. And the other thing is in Grow into the Leader Lounge, there is also the audio book. So listen to that while you drive, listen to it. You will be then prepared to join us. Absolutely. And you're here for this last half. I mean, a third, whatever it is, you'll be great. It'll be good.
yeah, totally. And
you know, I think maybe one thing I would like to say is you will get what you're meant to get. You're not behind. It's okay. You're where you need to be for your growth journey. And so I just kind of want to reassure everybody, like, don't feel like you're behind. Don't feel like, oh my God, I can't do it because I'm not keeping up. It's okay. It's okay. You're here for what you're meant to be here for. So.
Absolutely. I should really find, I can't find it quickly, but I'm going to pin, oh, here. Yes. It looks so pretty. Sherry and I worked together on this. So there's the post is in Grow in the Leader Lounge, or Grow the Leader Lounge. I'm going to pin it to the featured posts. So, and then Nikki, I'm going to tag you in it so that you can find it easier. And then you guys can listen. Yeah. I honestly think we could do this book once a year and get completely different things out of it every single time. So.
And I would totally agree because I did this book last year.
But I feel the same way about the 5 levels. And I feel the same way about, like, there are so many of these books, but I feel like if you do the foundational work, you might be able to listen to the audio version of it something and be like, oh yeah, like you may not choose to delve into it quite that deep every year, but you never know. Maybe this is something that we choose to do. Maybe not at this pace, but I have loved this pace. Honestly, I'm really thankful that you suggested one a week. So anyhow, the law of buy-in. People buy into the leader, then the vision.
So as I was studying this one this week, I listened to John Maxwell talk. He says, leaders come up to me all the time and they say, I've got this great vision, this great idea. And do you think my people are going to go with this? Are they going to buy into my vision? And he says, I always ask them one question. Do your people buy into you? And so I'd kind of like to start our conversation. I hope we're awake enough for this question, but I'd like to start the conversation with, how do you know if someone's bought into you? Like, what does that look like?
That's a great question.
I'll throw out just a few. Oh, Brenna, perfect.
So I actually was in a meeting yesterday that was, the law of buy-in is what it was all supposed to be about. But it didn't quite happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one where the purpose of the meeting was to say, this is our plan, and we're inviting all of you to join us. And we need a number of people to raise their hand and volunteer to be a part of this whole process. And for a whole host of reasons, that did not happen. They, as leaders of this process, they did not sound organized. They did not have clear questions that allowed people to actually provide comments on or feedback or say, okay, that actually is something that I'm interested in being a part of. There wasn't enough information provided. And it was, in my opinion, it was really sad because I've been a part of another group who's doing something very similar. And they had just simply said, you want to know what? We're sort of discovering this process. We know we're sounding vague. We normally aren't the people who sound vague. But we're still asking those types of questions in terms of the parameters and the eligibility of this program. So bear with us and we're going to get you an answer for that question. And so it wasn't that the two were working with different pieces of information themselves. It was the fact that one group was easier to buy into their leadership team, that they were organized, that they were going to find us answers, and provided confidence that if you said, I'm going to be part of a lead team or part of this group, that it's actually going to go someplace. Whereas the other group, there wasn't even enough there to ask the question. And so it really is a matter of, they may have the very similar vision of what their objectives are, but who is the leader that is going to help and empower you to get there? So that you can confidently say, I'm in, and I'm going to step up and I'm going to start working on something, even though we don't know all the answers and all the parameters.
That's really fascinating.
Do you think that the leaders, like the people that were asking the questions, were like, we saw that going differently in our minds? Like, do you think that did they have the awareness? That's my question. Like, did they have the awareness that the buy-in just simply wasn't there?
I think yes. We were about halfway through and you could tell that they were floundering because it wasn't going as planned or as they expected it to. But I think there were a lot of factors involved there. It's a really big project, and one of them had brought in a team of 3 people to do the leading and the planning, and the other one only had 1 person to lead that. And it's a big job for one person to get all of those pieces of the puzzle together to be able to have a comprehensive package to present to a group over 4 hours.
Over 4 hours?
Yeah, this is not a small project. This is provincial wide.
That is a really long meeting to lose buy-in before you're even halfway through. Yee!
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. Okay.
So, and I think that is the key of that leadership piece. And it's one where I think one of the key differences was the first group had actually done a lot of one-on-one conversations with their people of saying, what do you think you can contribute? Where do you think you fit? We're willing to have a conversation after you hear our presentation of what you're willing to do and how we can fit it all together.
That's really a fit for the story that John Maxwell tells about the law of buy-in. And is it, oh, now I don't remember if it's the workbook or the book. Shoot. But the story is that he goes to this church, and the church is planning to build a recreation room. They're planning to do this upgrade. And he comes in and he looks and he's like, that's not what they need. It takes him 2 years to say, okay, tell me about this and give me all the information. And they come back and then he asks some more questions. And as that's happening, he's developing buy-in with that congregation. He's providing them value. He's developing the trust. He's doing all the things. 2 years in, that group, that committee comes back and says, you know, this just isn't feeling like the right direction for us. We're starting to wonder if the increase in size in the worship area or the congregation, whatever he was seeing 2 years prior. And it had taken him that time to get buy-in, that development of relationships, that those conversations, those great questions, all of that. If he had come in with his wonderful vision right off the get-go, which it was a wonderful vision. It was the right vision. It was the right thing for the congregation, right thing for the community. But if he'd come in with that right away, it wouldn't have happened, and it probably would never have happened. It was that time that he knew to get through that law of buy-in piece. It's interesting. He talks in one of the videos that I listened to of him this week about a buy-in process. He talks about 7 or 8 steps. But the first step to the buy-in process is that people see the problem, that people see there's a need, that people are bought. In some ways, it's that they're bought into the pain. And I mean, that's kind of a challenging way to think about it. But the people see that there's an issue, see that there's a need. And then he talks about the second part of it is that the leader sees the same thing the people does, but he also sees the potential. John Maxwell talks about leaders seeing further and seeing faster. And that's that he sees that there's a way that there could be something that he could provide that would be good. So he could provide something or an idea or a strategy that would move this forward. But interestingly enough, he talks about the followers. The people have to become frustrated with the problem. The problem has to have enough emotion attached before we're ready to move forward and change. And then his third one is the leader develops the plan, the plan to fix, or what you might call the vision. Janelle would call this the hope dealer plan idea. Something that's going to solve the problem. So the leader develops that idea. The fourth thing he says is the leader must believe in the people. The leader has to be bought into the people. And the people have to know that the leader's bought into the people. Then the people have to be bought into the leader, not the vision. The people have to be bought into the leader. The fifth thing he mentioned is that the leader believes in the future. So we're starting to shift to where that leader's belief is being transferred to the people. So I may not believe I can do it, but my leader believes I can do it. And so maybe with the equipping and maybe with all this, maybe I really can do it. And we start to buy in to the leader's belief. And then the leader shares that belief that they can move forward, that belief that there's a solution to this pain point that we mentioned in number 1. And so in the number 6 kind of step of this, that leader is sharing the belief. And because the people believe in the leader, they believe in the plan. And they're willing to step in, step up, feel supported, feel like this will be a positive result, and then they're bought in. Then things move forward. And so back to that whole kind of conversation that we started with at the beginning is, how do you know that someone's bought into you as a leader? And how do I transmit that belief in my people to the people? What do you need to feel that your leader believes in you?
I was just going to ask the same thing.
I think Brenna mentioned a couple things earlier, because she mentioned the confidence of the leader. She mentioned the way that it was presented, that authenticity, not that the leader knew anything, but that authenticity.
Guess I'm sitting here thinking, like, how would I know the difference of if someone's bought into me as a leader versus they've bought into Plexus? And that is, and I'm just the connection. You know what I mean? I'm just doing lots of thinking. So if you see smoke, just keep going.
That is a great question, Carrie, because Plexus overarching has leadership and a vision. I think that's a great question. Who'd like to offer a thought?
I think it's one of, if they haven't bought into you, they're going to find someone else to get their Plexus from. Part of them being with you on your team is that they believe in you.
That seems so simple and brilliant. Okay.
Sharon, I think you had a thought too.
I think too, it's because I mean we have like different levels, like uplines and downlines and level 2s and level 4s and whatever. Is the person willing to trust you and follow you in the little things, right? Because before it's like, hey, let's go do this big thing together. Is there this really tiny thing that they're responding to? Are they buying into just responding to that? Right, if it makes sense, right? But I agree with Brenna. If someone in the first place has signed up with you on your immediate level, they've already, somewhat bought into you, for sure. Yeah.
That's a really good thought, Sharon, is the little things. And that's some of the first steps with buy-in, is the little things.
I think it's really interesting, especially in the organization that we are part of, because there's so many leaders that lead, like do the whole 360-degree thing, right? They're out there, they're putting themselves out there. They're like, other people follow them that aren't part of their team. And so you can actually get buy-in from people that aren't anywhere near your lineage, right? And I find it so fascinating. Even like you think about people like Brooke Hemingway and Emily Gibson and Abby Kappa and, people that develop things that other people can consume, to follow them. And it is just simply really fascinating. But even on a smaller scale, I know that some of you even here have had people from other teams be like, hey, I'm not getting the support from my leader, but they've already bought into you. And so they want to come. Do you know what I mean? It is so fascinating where people can initially buy in or feel like they have this relationship with the person and they want to buy into them. And then they find out that maybe that's not where they want to buy in, but they've already put their money in, right? Like they've done the choosing of who they want to buy their Plexus from, and then they kind of change their thoughts. So Amy, I know you're like mid-type, but we want to hear your voice.
Well, I was thinking that many of the things that Brenna said about approach, the words in my notes were approach and call for questions and clarity and that two-way street. And I have been in a meeting where one person came in and this is what we're gonna do. And then they flip pages and it's gonna look kind of like this. And they flip pages and you're like, but you have a connection with that person enough that you start asking questions, even though you don't really understand anything, that helps them clarify it in front of a group of people to help them get that buy-in. So even though they came in and the first half hour was like, oh no, as a leader, with that you already connect with that person. You have a clarity, you have all those things. You start feeding them the questions to get the clarity, to get the answer of, we don't know. That is an important question. We're going to get that lots. We need to find that out. Process. But in it, it really brought me back to the law of process. And I can't find the pretty little chart. And it did just take me till now to figure out which law it was. On John Maxwell's, he's got the acronym. And first you like plant the seed of the idea. Hey, what about? And that was that comment about, do the people recognize the pain? Do you see that? If you're tripping over the shoes, is there something you can do about it? Did you see the shoes? Did you know you were tripping over them? Or did you think you were clumsy? Because I see the shoes. Can we move the shoes? And having those little step conversations. And are you looking for the chart? Because
I am.
It must be in the book.
Might be stuck in the book, maybe.
In the book.
Well, he's got phases in the book.
It's and maybe it's not this one. Maybe it's not this John Maxwell book that the acronym is in.
I was gonna say, I think it's
So if someone knows the acronym,
Brenna might know.
It's the law of navigation, and it's plan ahead on page 43 in the book. So predetermine a course of action, lay out your goals, adjust your priorities, notify key personnel, allow time for acceptance, then head into action, expect problems, always point to the successes, and daily review your plan.
And I think that law is in our workbook as well, but I don't know if that chart is in the workbook. I remember we discussed it when we discussed that law, but I don't know that the chart is in the workbook.
I think I also remember feeling lost when you were discussing that because I had only looked at the workbook.
Right. Okay. Yes. So it's in the text, not the workbook. And we talked about it on the video on the day that we studied the law of navigation. So it is definitely on that video.
Refer to the videotape. Well, no, it is actually in here.
Is it? Oh, cool. What page?
41. I must be remembering being lost another time.
No, you're absolutely right. Page 41.
It does happen.
Perfect. So, and people are going to say, oh, well, they're referring back to laws and I maybe wasn't there. So this is kind of what happens with John Maxwell. As we get deeper in, we start referring back to previous laws because everything becomes connected, integrated. I was talking to somebody earlier, maybe yesterday, about interdependence. Things work together. It's like a biological system, but things work together. And the law of buy-in, he refers to it as a cousin to the law of respect. And earlier when we were talking about getting buy-in, respect seems really closely connected with that. And it was interesting because I don't know that I'd heard him say this before, but when I listened yesterday, he said the law of buy-in is the emotional understanding and the relationships. The law of respect is the credibility and the ability to produce. And I don't think I'd really seen that clarity between the two laws or thought about them that way. So I can repeat that.
Yes. Would you repeat that?
So it's like cousins. The law of buy-in is the emotional understanding and the relationships. The law of respect is the credibility and the ability to produce. And they really mesh together. They're not the same, but they mesh together. And he said, and this was a little bit of an interesting tip. He said, how do you know that people are bought into you? Well, he said, when people come and ask for leadership counsel, they come, they share, they're bought in. And so, Carrie, you'd kind of asked that question earlier. People that come, ask, they're bought in.
So the law of buy-in can also be industry or that sort of thing specific.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna pose like that the law of influence is perhaps first. Well, I mean, obviously it's first because it's like the second law, but you need the law of influence before the law of respect. Like it all, like
They all work together.
Hmm.
Which is why it's very challenging to talk about the 5 levels without the base of the laws. Not that you can't learn from the 5 levels without the base, but you're going to learn at a different depth.
Yeah, the first time that I did the 5 levels, it was a prerequisite to have read the 21 laws. But I mean, I was plowing through it because it was just a prerequisite. It wasn't like camp here, figure all this out. It's a different experience, the workbook. And then I have to ask, like, so why choose a workbook here versus like, what is the actual overarching thought process? There are some books with workbooks. There are some books without workbooks.
So, and some of that I think is business strategies, because it depends on how he teaches these things, where he teaches them, and what volume of teaching is done in terms of the business sense of, do you produce workbooks? Do you print books? Like all of those bigger pieces.
I just find it interesting. The business end of
Is
it.
that sort of
Amy?
like in elementary school where they produce workbooks versus in middle school, you're kind of in between, and in high school, there is not a workbook, it's a notebook.
Good thinking.
Mm-hmm. You know what? It's really interesting when we were talking about how you know you have buy-in or how you gain buy-in or whatever, just going back to being in Arizona with the leadership excellence training. First of all, if you really want to get buy-in from your people, from your upper leadership, and I'm trying to think about how we can do this in a way that's feasible, but like going to corporate, because they have done such an amazing job creating, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen how many awards Plexus has won simply by being an amazing business, an amazing place to work. They've gotten awards for their philanthropy, like, and this is just corporate. This isn't like Plexus ambassadors. This is corporate. They have been voted the best place to work in Arizona multiple times. Like it is such a great place to work. And the people who are there genuinely love working there. And so when you as an ambassador come into Plexus, knowing that you love Plexus, you're already pretty much bought in. You thought you were bought in. You thought you were bought in to the deepest level you possibly could be. Because if you've already put your money down to buy a plane ticket to Arizona and go there, you probably bought in. And then you start walking in there and talking to the employees and talking to the shipping people, right? And they are so thankful for you because of what you do and how what you do as an ambassador impacts their job and makes it possible. And just the attitude and the atmosphere and their buy-in to the company and their buy-in to you by proxy. Like, it is just such an amazing thing to go there. Like even just corporate, right? You could have a different level of buy-in simply by walking into corporate, talking to the people there, seeing that the first thing you do before you even get in the doors is you see bricks laid into, I don't know if everybody knows this. There are bricks that are laid into, you have to walk over them in order to get into the building. It's not very large because there weren't very many, but the bricks have lasered in them the names of every emerald, sapphire, and diamond that was current when the building was built. So Eva's name is there. It says Diamond Ambassador. And it is, you see those names. Those names are part of the foundation. Do you see like all of the implications here? Like it's like mind blowing, right? You walk in and to the left, there's an entire room that is dedicated to celebrating ambassadors. Like they have a video playing of the Silver Stars winners. So there was like a video of Judith and Rainy Poole. And I saw Tanya Van Heerden. I saw people I knew out of the thousands of ambassadors that there are. I saw faces that I knew, right? And they've got the awards and they've got like all of this stuff. And it's there. It's the first thing you see in the door to your left. Brilliant, right? So you buy into a different level when you get there, but then you sit down at a training and you hear from, and I'm trying to quantify how much further that buy-in goes, because you see it's a beautiful space. Yes. Okay. So they spent money on a beautiful space. Okay, sure. But it is the belief that is woven into the words and the emotion that they have in their voices when they're speaking to you. And I was talking about this with somebody else, and I said, I really feel like people, and I'm going to go faith-based here. I really feel like people who are Christians can understand how much Plexus loves us, because it is not on your merit. It is not because you're a diamond. It's not because you're a ruby. It's because you've chosen to be there, and they just love you. So if you all came, they would treat you the same as Celeste Gwynn. There is no difference. It doesn't matter who you are. They love you because you're you and you're there. And it doesn't matter your position or what you've done or what you've created or whatever. They'll celebrate with you on anything, but they want to create more momentum for you. It's just, it's so crazy how you can see that. Like they literally, even though there were the diamond trainers there that were big deal people, right? I felt when they were talking to me that I could have been a diamond trainer, because that's how much belief they spoke to me with. And it's just like, okay, I don't think I have any more buy-in to give you, but if I could possibly buy into you more, this would be me buying into you more, right? So I don't know, guys, I'm trying to figure out how on earth with COVID and craziness, we can all do a retreat down to corporate. That would be so amazing.
So it's really interesting how they exemplified to you their buy-in to you, that they as a leadership group or a team were bought into you. And I think there was some great lessons in what you shared to help us as ambassadors learn how to show our people, our teams, that we're bought into them.
It's kind of like when we were doing transformation tables, and Carrie's big aha was the whole everyone has value, right? I can just hear Carrie's voice in my head now, because Carrie, so just so you know, it's not John Maxwell in my head that's like everyone has value. It's Carrie's. It's Carrie's voice that is saying everyone has value. And it's true. It's so true, because I wasn't, and I want to be super clear on this, it wasn't because of who I was. It didn't matter. Everybody in that room got that same buy-in, and everybody felt special.
Yes,
Sharon.
Sharon.
I have a thought, which is maybe good. We'll see. But I think to like listen to this is interesting. I think personality plays a lot into it too, how you're going to get somebody to buy into you, right? Because when you talk about that, wow, like so beautiful building, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm someone, I'd be like,
yeah,
good. Are you a nice person? Brooke Hemingway, double diamond, don't care. Are you a nice person?
Mhm.
Right. But that's me. Other people are looking at that going, yeah, but look what she did. Look what she did. Look what she did. This is really motivating me. And I bought in. Right. And she is, I'm sure, is a nice person. I'm not saying she's not. Right. But I think there's different things that make different people tick. Right. I mean, and it's even when you talk about big, beautiful buildings and stuff like that, and to go kind of religious or whatever, there's people, you can have a big, beautiful cathedral, like Cologne, probably the most beautiful cathedral in the entire world. There's people who will go in and protest against it because isn't it disgusting that they would do this, right? But they love their rundown little moldy basement where they're meeting, right? And they've bought into that because they bought into the relationships. Other people are buying into, look at how spectacular, like this is a work of art, this is amazing. And that's appealing to their personality. And I just think as leaders, what we need to do is we kind of need to get to know someone and find out what makes them tick if we want them to buy into us. Because what is going to do it for one person is not going to do it for another person. I don't know if that's a good thought or
No,
yeah.
it's a brilliant thought. I love how you said that because it's so true, right? And it blows me away because everyone is different, and to talk with different people who are very different personality wise and to hear their takeaways from everything. But at the end, all of us, regardless of how different we were, left feeling valued. And like, and there's a reason why they do all these personality tests, because then they teach to it. And if you start to dissect it, you're like, this is for this personality, this part right here, this part right here, this is for this part, this is for this. It's just so interesting. I think Brenna had your hand up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of build on that of in the law of respect, it talks about gaining respect from others follows a pattern. When people respect you as a person, they admire you. When they respect you as a friend, they love you. And when they respect you as a leader, they follow you. And so I think it's a really good point that Sharon made of you have to start at that relationship level of, do you admire the person? Because they may be a leader with a vision, and the vision may be good, but if you don't buy into that leader as a person first and foremost, so that you can actually get the respect to follow them, you're not going to follow. And that you're going to build that respect out of those relationships.
So who has questions? I see a lot of thoughtful faces. Who has a question? We ask the questions usually. So who has a question? Because it's feeling to me like we've connected this law with a lot of other laws, which I think is really fascinating.
I actually have a question for Carrie, if that's allowed. Just because you guys moved into a new position in a new town, right, as pastors coming in, how do you see this law of buy-in through the lens of what you guys do and what you've experienced before? Because this isn't the first time that you guys have moved somewhere and become pastors, right? And a pastor, if you want to pick someone who is a leader, it's like you have moved in and you are supposed to be the leader, so lead.
Yeah, right. Because you automatically, with the title, have a somewhat of a forced buy-in. It sounds like a draft. Kidding. But really, there is that initial because you have the role, but then it has to hit next level where you have to have relationships and you have to earn respect and you have to be a person of integrity. And yeah, so it does, there's different levels of buy-in, I believe. Can we level our buy-in? I don't know. And I was even thinking after my initial question, my initial buy-in to Plexus was the overarching Plexus company, because the way I came to it was just a random, it was just the first person I heard posting about it. There wasn't really a buy-in on a personal level. There was a buy-in on a grand scale. But now, working my business, my buy-in with Janelle investing in me and loving on me and building into me is very different. I'm just really loving this whole buy-in, and I have nothing intelligent to say, but
But I think I agree with the different levels, Carrie, because it just makes me think about, and there's more than buy-in, but you can buy in enough with a friend to go for coffee, but you're not necessarily bought in enough to go on a 2-week vacation.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I really love this chapter.
Go ahead, Janelle.
No, just what I threw in the chat there was, I feel like your first buy-in wasn't necessarily to the company because you didn't necessarily believe that what they were going to, like what we were telling you or what your leader was telling you was the truth, but your buy-in was to hope.
Yeah, my buy-in was hoping the products would work. 100%.
Your buy-in was a hope for a better life, right? And then when you realized that the products do what actually was presented to you, you're like, I totally buy into this company.
Right.
But
so my buy-in was never a person. It was, right.
It started with hope. Which again,
well, way to shake my roots this morning, friends. Excellent.
So I have another piece of that question then. So if we buy into hope, does that link to how we're bought into ourselves and trusting ourselves that we're committing to hope?
That's a little deep, Sherry.
And is that why some people are easier to, we'll use the word influence, because if we really are pulling on that hope piece, if you have people who are hopeless, I can think of somebody right now that I sponsored a couple months ago. And she was like, yeah, I'll try it, but nothing else has worked, and her degree of hopelessness, I really believe has impacted her view on the product, because she's still like, I think there are some people that'll be like negative Nellies, but still have a good solid vein of hope that they don't want to admit. But then there are people who are just plain hopeless. Like, not, I think you're hopeless. They feel hopeless, right? They feel empty in there. And I really do feel like that projects onto their ability to see results.
We've got a couple comments in the chat, and Brenna's is, how does one's hope make them willing to be consistent with the product because they're hoping for a better future? And maybe because they're believing in themselves and their willingness to commit to that better future. They're bought into their own ability, their own consistency, their own persistence, their own belief in themselves. So that's an interesting comment. Jimmy Lou has a great comment in here as well. And she said, my buy-in was into hope for a better life. And I think the story of the Diamonds building orphanages really got me. That was a huge factor in the buy-in, that the buy-in to the company was not really about the income you earn. It was about the good you could do.
And I think that goes back to Sharon's, everyone's personality, what speaks to a personality type, right? Because you're going to have people that are like, why do I need to make $500,000 in a year? And they can't see past it until, like Jimmy said, you point out that we have people who are literally buying land, building a building, like employing local people, building a building, finding children on the street, getting people that are qualified to take care of them and educate them and create a safe space for them, and are funding that ministry. You can't do that on a $75,000 a year. It would be very difficult household income, but you can with more resources. And I always remember how Kristen used to talk about money isn't money. Money is a resource. Time is a resource. And if you have more time and you have more money, those are two valuable resources that are often hard to get. And you can choose to do whatever you want to do with them. Brooke Hemingway, again, at the beginning of COVID, she was like, my goal is no longer just to like create more silvers and, do whatever. My goal is to create more leaders who are ridiculously wealthy, who have the same passions to seeing things like the sex trade end, that will dump money into that particular, like she had a very particular vein, right? She wanted to get people who were on the same page with her passion for sex slavery to help fund the dissolution of it. And that's a totally different depth of why, right? Like, I'm not just going to make people debt free. I'm actually going to take these people who have the same passion as me, give them the resources to actually put boots on the ground and save people.
It's interesting. Diana's comment in the chat is, I didn't buy in right away. First, I needed proof that it would work. So that's interesting. And I'm sure you're probably busy and can't talk, Diana. But I think, like Carrie said, there's levels of buy-in, but there's also what the buy-in is about. Is the buy-in about it's going to help my health? Is the buy-in about I believe the person? Is the buy-in about the hope that that person is bringing to you? And when we talk about needing proof, what does that do in terms of our level of buy-in? Is our immersion in the understanding of the bigger picture, does that simply increase the depth of our buy-in?
Yes, Sherry, I believe that's correct. Just to go one step further, yes, Nikki and I are related, but I don't want to say I didn't trust her, but I didn't know her well because she's my brother's daughter-in-law, and I needed to because I've been hurt so much in the past and by family, I needed to trust her. But first, I needed to make sure that those products were going to work in order for me to do that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah.
That totally makes sense, Diana. And I think you bring up something that we haven't mentioned today is where we come from. We all have baggage. And that baggage affects how we view the world. Like Janelle used the term earlier, the lens that we see through. That baggage all is part of that lens that we're looking through. So where you think you're doing all the right things for buy-in from someone, because they come from a different place, they have different it's different situations that they've experienced in the past, then they're going to respond differently because of that, and because of the fact that their personality is different than yours.
And let me add in there, I threw that in the chat, the pain point is different. Everyone's pain point is different. And this is why we need to tell our stories. And we, like, Eva made the comment the other day on a work in worship. She's like, that's why every time I tell my story, I think people have heard it 1,000 times. How many of you guys remember the last time you heard Eva's story? I don't remember the last time I heard it. Like it was years and years and years and years and years ago. Right? Like her full health story, her journey, like the entirety of it. Now think, when was the last time you told yours in front of people? Right? And who in Noelle's sphere of influence needs to hear Jimmy Lou's story?
Yeah.
And just because it's left my mouth or Jimmy Lou's mouth like 6 dozen times does not mean we should stop sharing it. And so, and there's a bunch of stuff happening in the chat, but I just want to say this quickly before we hit that. You're going to be asked to share your story in bits, in text, in video. Yes, I know, in video. You're going to be asked to share over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And that's just part of it. When people come in, I've had people come in, guys, can you even imagine? I've had people come and want to work the business, but refuse to share their story. Refuse to tell people how the products have personally impacted them. And I'm like, well, this is going to be hard. This is going to be harder than it would need to be if you would just share what it's done for, even if it seems really surface to you. It doesn't matter. To Linda, it might be the light that she needs. Like Carrie, right? She had no influence. Like the person maybe that shared with her didn't have the same level of influence as you would assume somebody joining something like this. But she shared something that was necessary, right? Sorry, I'm scrolling up. Carrie says, think of the buy-in we needed to start a youth center. A new pastor doesn't just get that. Trust and time play a huge factor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say, it probably wasn't just trust in the pastor. It was trust in the unit of you and your husband together. You were bringing a twofold, like layered buy-in. Amy's saying something.
She just came to life. Yeah.
Thanks. And the community. It's one thing to start something because somebody is there. And it's one thing to say, okay, we can do it while they're here. But it's the next level to the community. Those leaders had the belief in the community that the community could continue and grow and support. And even if they needed help, there was a place to get resources. But the sustainability of the entire project included all of that belief being poured into the community.
Well, ladies, this has been a fascinating conversation.
I feel like we were just waking up and just getting going. Like, come on.
But our time is done. The clock is struck. My timer's going off even. So I just really would like everybody to think about the law of buy-in this week. So as you're preparing for the law of victory, realize how the law of buy-in is a piece of that. And just think about that this week so that come next week, you can sort of connect the dots on what that looks like.
Absolutely. We will convert the recording and have it up on YouTube as quick as we possibly can. We learned that we can upload 5 things at once the other day. The things you don't know. Anyway, thanks guys so much for being here and for the value that you have added to this. It's just been awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day. Bye.